to the computer.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, very good. So we are here to Zoom about Zoom. All the things that you never thought you needed to know about Zoom, but might. So we have Mark Harrell today, who's an experienced LitNet tutor, and he's tutored before LitNet time as well. And he's going to show us some wonderful ways to use Zoom in our tutoring. So let's start by muting our mics, and then Mark can let us know when we can open them if there's going to be a conversation or participation. So I'll leave it over to Mark. So without further ado, over to Mark.
Thanks, Lee. Everyone can hear me, I assume? Okay, good. So yeah, I have been tutoring on Zoom with my learner for about 18 months now. And actually, we've not met for tutoring in person at all. So our relationship has been exclusively on Zoom. I should start by saying, this is obviously about Zoom, and I've used Zoom a lot. I know other people use other platforms that are similar, like Google Meet and maybe Skype or FaceTime, or I don't know if WhatsApp has a video component to it, but there are lots of platforms for video conferencing out there. I've used Zoom. I've tried a couple of others, but I like Zoom. It has some great features. If you use a different platform, obviously some of what I say, maybe a lot of what I say today won't be relevant to that platform, but I will also talk about sort of materials to share and things that are relevant for any kind of online teaching. With that, I guess just to talk, I think the benefits of Zoom are obvious. There is some, obviously meeting face to face is an ideal situation, and you do lose something when you go to online. Anybody who's a teacher knows that from their teaching experiences. Teaching to a group, or even meeting in a group in a work setting on Zoom can be challenging. Meeting one-on-one on Zoom, as you will with your learner, or as you do with your learner, I think actually works quite well. And what I'm going to try to show is that you can really mimic all of the features of being face-to-face, other than obviously the intangible feature of just being physically close to somebody. But the ability to share materials, to look at stuff on the internet together, to read a book together, and so forth, they're all there and can really make for a good, productive experience. So everybody obviously knows enough about Zoom to have gotten on this call. So that means you have an account set up on Zoom, and you have probably downloaded the Zoom app to your computer or whatever device you're using. So you're that far along. I don't know if you've all hosted a session. The features when you're the host are a little bit different than when you're just a participant, and there are options and settings that you can change that might be useful in your particular session with your learner. So you have to get familiar with those. One thing I would point out is that you can practice all of these features on Zoom without being in an actual Zoom meeting. If you open up the Zoom app on your computer and you get to the main page, you can just hit New Meeting. It will actually open up a new meeting session. You will be the only participant in that session unless you have somebody else join you, like a friend or a spouse or a child who can sort of play act with you on it. That's a good way to practice these. But even by yourself on one of those sessions, you can check out what all the settings mean. You can check out how the share function works. You can check out how chat works and so forth. So you can practice before your online session with your learner. Okay, so I'm just gonna quickly go around what's on the screen in front of you I like to, when I'm in a Zoom meeting, I like to maximize the Zoom screen. It's a small thing, but it actually clears out of your way a lot of visual interruptions and just focuses on the Zoom meeting itself. So if you look at, and this is, I'm on a Mac computer, but I think these features are located in the same place on Windows computers. If you're working on a tablet or a phone, the features are all there. They're just in different locations, and it's a slightly different experience working on a tablet or a phone on Zoom than it is on a laptop or a desktop computer. But looking around my screen to the top right, there's a view button that allows you to change how you're seeing the meeting. It's and some of this you may be all familiar with it, but I just wanted to give my thoughts on some of these features. On view, when I'm one-on-one with my student, I like to be in the gallery view. What that does is just has two equal size windows open with my image of my learner's image, where of equal size, side by side. It's just for me, it's a comfortable way to talk to somebody. The one time where I use speaker view, which is one of the other options in that menu on the upper right-hand corner, is when I'm trying to see how my learner is pronouncing something, or if I'm trying to demonstrate how to pronounce something. It's helpful in that case to use the speaker view, so that you can see their lips and demonstrate also how you're pronouncing something for their benefit. That's a user setting. So you have to have your student pick the speaker view if you want them to see you in speaker view, if that makes sense. Okay, so it's helpful to use that for that particular. It may also be if you're trying to point to something physically in a book that you're holding up, for example. Speaker view can be helpful because it puts you as the speaker in a large frame. Okay, so that's view. On the bottom left-hand corner, mute and there's a microphone icon and a camera icon. Those have settings that you might have to change periodically. You can explore what those are. Notice that the little up arrow next to the buttons, those access options related or settings related to that particular feature. When you are the host of a meeting, the share screen button that should be right in the middle of your screen at the bottom and in green, that will have an arrow. I don't think that there's an arrow when you're just a participant in a meeting, but there are some options there that are relevant, and we're going to talk about those in a minute. Then going along the bottom of the screen, there's security. There's a button for security. The one thing in there that when you're the host that you want to notice is this lets your participants in the meeting, your student, if you're one-on-one, also share their screen. And so that's one of the things you want to look at and have checked when you're in the session, in case your student wants to show you something that they're working on, and that they want to be the sharer of information on screen. So that's something to look at. Next to that is participants, which brings up a list of participants. I don't think there's much there.
Did we lose your sound? Is it just me, or did I lost your sound? Does everybody hear Mark?
Can you hear me? I'm still talking, Lee. Can you hear me?
I think my internet went down a little bit, but I can hear you now. But okay.
Okay, fine. So on record, you can record your session. I think it's a nice practice, like Lee did, to ask if anybody has any objections before you record anything. But even in, one of the nice things about Zoom, by the way, is that even with a basic subscription that you don't pay for, a non-premium subscription, you have access to all of the tools that you might need for teaching online with your student. It's particularly good for one-on-one because you can have, you're not limited by the 40-minute cap when you're one-on-one. So it's a nice way to teach. When you can record your session with your basic membership, it records to your computer. It makes a big file if you talk for more than 5 minutes, but it's both a video and an audio file. That might be something you want to do with your learner, and then you can share the file with them. They can have a video copy of your session. Then there's reactions. I don't think we have to talk about that here. And apps, which is a bunch of stuff that people are now producing by way of apps that are specific for Zoom. That some of them actually look like, I haven't spent any time with them, but they look like they might be interesting and some might be helpful for online teaching. So let's talk about chat and share screen. So you can all actually bring up your chat window by just clicking that button at the bottom of your screen. As the host, I have it set so that everyone can chat with everyone, or so that everyone can chat with everyone in the meeting. Again, when you're one-on-one, it doesn't matter because there's just one other person and they'll see everything you present in chat. But the things about chat, I mean, I just like to keep chat open when I'm talking to my learner. Even in our opening conversation, we always spend 10 or 15 minutes starting by talking about our weeks and what's been going on. And sometimes you stumble on a word or a phrase, or I'm having trouble understanding her, or she's having trouble understanding me, or I think I'm saying words that she might not have. So easy to just type a quick message on chat so that they can see what you're saying in writing, and vice versa. So that's an obvious, easy way. It sort of replicates having a notepad in front of you. If you were side by side with your learner, you write something, they write something. The nice thing about chat is that you can save the chat. If you look at those three buttons that are at the side of that menu, at the bottom of the chat menu, one of the options is to save the chat. It'll go into some folder on your computer that will be difficult to find, but you can locate it, and it actually has a transcript of the chat from your session. That might be something that you can save or send to your learner. The other nice thing about chat is that you can attach things to the chat. So let's say that I'm on the internet in my browser. I'm looking at an article in the newspaper. I want to share it with my learner. I just copy the link, and then I'm going back into Zoom now, and in the chat, I'm just going to right-click and paste the link that I copied on my browser and send that to everybody. So that's an easy way to send stuff that's on the internet, or a link to stuff that's on the internet, to your learner. The other thing you can attach is folders and files. So if you hit that little icon that has like a page with the corner bent, that's going to let you access files on your computer. So right now I'm going to send you a little outline that I did for this meeting. I can find it quickly. Here we go. Okay, so did you all see in your chat window a Word document? Okay, so you can open that now or at your leisure in the future, but it's an outline of what I'm covering today. So that's helpful. If you're sitting with your learner, if you're meeting with your learner and one of you needs to share a document with the other, That's for any folder, any file that's on your computer to share. Okay, so that's chat. I guess maybe I'll just stop. Does anybody have any questions about anything I've said so far?
Yeah, I have, it's Lenore. I have a quick question. For some reason, usually the chat box in other Zoom meetings I've had is off to the right side, but this one
Yes.
on my computer is right over your face.
Yes. So if you maximize the window like I do when I
Yeah.
meet on Zoom, the basic Zoom window, when you open up chat, it opens up as a free floating window in the middle of your screen.
Yeah,
You can with your mouse or your trackpad, whatever you use,
yeah.
you can move that window anywhere you want.
Oh, there it goes. I tried
Okay.
before and I couldn't get it to move. I see. Yeah.
Okay.
I
And you
did
can
it.
also
Thank you.
you can also size the chat window so that if you want to make it bigger, if you're typing a lot of dialogue with your learner, you might want to make it bigger. So
Oh,
there are those
oh,
features.
yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
If you don't have your Zoom window maximized, if you just have it, 3/4 of your screen, then the chat screen opens up linked to the right side of the screen. That's not so bad either. That's kind of a nice place for it so that it's not covering anybody's face, but whatever works for you. Okay, so let's talk about sharing screen. Here's here's where the money is on Zoom. Here's where you're going to share materials in real time with your learner in a way that you can both see them. Obviously, you can use Zoom just as a video conferencing device where you're seeing each other and hearing each other in real time, but you're not using any computer materials. You're both, say, using a workbook if you're using a workbook curriculum with your learner, or if you've sent them some material ahead of time, a PDF of some pages that you might have scanned from a workbook, and you're both just looking at that piece of paper on your lap or on your desk while meeting. That's fine. That's not taking advantage of all of the features of Zoom, obviously, but it is one way of working on Zoom. I will say that Zoom works best on a computer, in my experience, either a desktop, which I use, or a laptop. It works reasonably well on a tablet, although it works better on a tablet where you have a separate keyboard, because if you're trying to use Zoom so that you're typing stuff and your learner is typing stuff, it's hard to do that on the same screen that you're actually trying to look at each other on. So it can be done, but it's not ideal. Working on a phone, it's more challenging still. It's hard when you're sharing documents. It's hard to see them and to work with them on a phone. But so if you're trying to teach on Zoom on a regular basis, it's good to if both parties to the meeting are on basically the biggest device possible, because it's just easier to see things on a big screen. Okay, so so what might you want to share? Okay, and that's there's a whole bunch of different things that you can share. You might want to just for the moment hit the share button on your screen so that you can see what the options are there. You should see along the top of the well, there's basic, advanced, and files. Disregard that for the moment, but in the main screen for sharing, there are options up at the top. One is desktop, one is whiteboard, and then on mine, because I'm on a Mac, there's the ability to share something that's on a separate iPhone, either by AirPlay or by plugging in a cable. You could actually, if you're feeling advanced, you could try those options. They're actually pretty interesting and fun. But the ones I wanted to show you, first of all, were desktop and whiteboard. desktop, if you share your desktop with a meeting, you are literally sharing everything that's visible on your desktop with the other person. Okay, so it's an okay way to work, but you need to be careful that you only have open on your screen stuff that you want anybody else on the call to see. A better way, and if you have anything else open on your computer besides the Zoom session, you will have other options underneath the four that I just mentioned. And those will be the specific windows that you have other materials open in, on your computer. And that's the way I like to share. I like to share a specific thing that I have open. So for example, I'm going to share now, I mentioned that I was looking at the newspaper online. I'm going to share that screen with you. Before I do that, though, I just want to mention in that sharing window, if you look at the bottom left-hand corner, there's a box to check for sharing sound. You want to make sure that if you're going to share something that has an audio component to it, that you want to listen to something from your computer that you're sharing with your learner that has audio, that has to be checked. That way they can hear the audio that's being produced on whatever content that you're using on your computer. So I'm just going to check that. Not that I'm going to show necessarily any audio, but it's good. It's just easy to check. And then I'm going to share, and you should all be able to see my my internet browser open to an article from the newspaper. I will point out to you that once you are sharing something, if you want to change what you're sharing, you can stop the share and start all over again with that basic share menu. But you can also share. You can also change what you're sharing on the fly. So if you move your cursor to the top of the screen that you're sharing, you're going to see a similar menu to the one that appeared at the bottom of your screen in Zoom. And one of the things is new share. So you can click on new share, and I can change to another window that I have open very easily. And you should all now be seeing just a folder with a list of files from my computer. Did that happen? Okay, all right. And in that same menu, you can pause the share. I'm going to stop the share. We'll just go back to the regular session. So that's just sharing something that you have open on the internet. A real life example, just in my last session with my learner. My learner is a beginning college student. She's taking some classes at BCC. She's trying to organize an internship that she has to do for her coursework. And so, as is often the case, I had planned a different lesson, got on Zoom, we were talking about our weeks, and she said, I'm trying to set up this internship. And I said, what kinds of places are you looking at? And so she talked about her experience, and some didn't work out. And she had one that she was now pursuing with a group called First Steps, which is a group in Berkshire County that works with women who have addiction problems. And so while I was talking and while she was describing it, I just Googled it on the internet. I found what she was talking about, and I started looking at it, and I said, we should spend some time looking at this together. So I brought it up on my screen. I'm of course not going to be able to find it at the moment, but I brought it up. I shared it with her, so we were both looking at the same thing, and we just read it together. I had her read paragraphs describing what services they provide and so forth. When you are sharing material on the internet, you can use your cursor highlight stuff that you're looking at, so that if you want to direct your learner's attention to, I'm just trying to reopen up something on the internet to demonstrate this. Let's see. Okay. So, if I wanted to read this article together with my student, and I wanted to say, hey, Ashley, can you read this paragraph for me? I can just highlight it with my cursor. I assume you can all see that I've actually highlighted some material. So it's easy with your cursor and with highlighting to bring somebody's attention to a word or a sentence or a paragraph, which I find really useful when I'm tutoring. Okay, I'm going to stop that share. What else might you want to share? Well, you can share, obviously. You can share. By the way, I'm going to share the whiteboard, which is one of those features on the top line. I'm not a particular fan of this, mostly because if you are working on a computer, you have to use your cursor, your mouse or your trackpad to write, and I find it hard to write with a trackpad. But it is something that's there. If you, I think actually this is a case where it might be better to be on a tablet where you have a stylus than it is to be on a computer. But that feature is there. You can use it. That's one sharing possibility. I'm going to close out of this. The other thing is, and this is where it takes some investment of time, which is to share things from your own personal library on your computer of teaching resources. And that's something that if you're going to teach on Zoom, and even if you're teaching in person, you might have a library or a file or folder on your computer where you're putting materials that you've collected. So I'm just going to share my folder. I just have a bunch of stuff that I've thrown in here over time that I might want to use with my learner. So for example, I have sets of flashcards that I've downloaded from a particular source on the internet. In this case, I think it was ESL Library. So I'm just going to open that up. And I'm going to, when you open up a new item or a new piece of software on your computer, you won't be sharing that. So you do have to adjust your share to capture the new thing that you're open. So in this case, that folder that I clicked on opened up in preview on my computer. So that's what I'm going to share now. So hopefully you can all see that. And so these are flashcards that I might use. This happens to be on the environment, I think. What are they trying to depict? In this case, it's acid rain. And I scroll through. What do you think this is? Whoops. This is an acorn. And I have it set up so that the word follows the particular flashcard, the particular picture. So that takes some time to organize, but depending on what you're doing with your learner, it might be helpful. Myra, did you have a question?
Yes, I did, Mark. Very quickly, when you were sharing the whiteboard, do
Yes.
you have on your end, since you're the host, do you see on your end the ability to erase what you're drawing or writing?
Yes,
Okay.
you do.
Okay.
You can, just like any drawing feature on your computer, you can erase the last thing you did. You can erase the whole thing, so you can clear it out. You can also save whiteboards from from a meeting. If you are using it in a way that's you've got information on it that you want to save, you can save them and share them with your learner. So there's that feature.
Mark, sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
I have a colleague in the office who was mentioning that if you go to the highlight, you can click on something that says text that will print in actual letters. Do you see that capability?
Yes.
The drop down for
So you can click text and then it brings up a text box and
Yeah.
and you can
Text-
type right on the
Yeah.
whiteboard.
What are you?
Oh, yes, yes, correct. In the whiteboard, there is text capability. So if you click on text, it will put a little text box into the whiteboard, and you can type in that text box. So yes, so that actually can be useful. I'm going to try to show you something that's better than that from my perspective, because I don't believe that that's interactive. I don't believe when you're sharing a whiteboard with your student, you can type on the whiteboard or you can draw on the whiteboard, but your student cannot. And I think that there are other apps that are out there that you can do it collaboratively. But I'm going to show you hopefully how to share a Google Doc on the screen that allows you both to type in the same doc at the same time and see what each of you is writing in real time. Okay, so that's an example. So this was an example of showing material that's on my screen or that's in my computer that I want to use for a particular lesson. Okay, I'm going to stop that share. You know, there was other materials in that folder. I at one point was putting together some exercises in Word documents. So let's see what this one was. Oh, here's plural nouns and possessive adjectives. I'm going to share this screen with you now. This was in a Word document. And so I might teach a lesson from something like this, where I've got, I have some examples of how to use possessive adjectives and possessive pronouns, and then followed by some exercises. And I might ask my learner to, help me fill in the blanks, and I might type in this document while they're giving me the answers. I might also send this document, a copy of this document, to my learner via chat or via email before the session, so that they have it and they can look at it themselves. So all those options are available. The other thing that I use a couple of services online that I subscribe to, and so I use ESL Library that I like a lot, and I also use Culips. I've mentioned this in other meetings. Culips is a set of podcasts that are available. The podcasts themselves are available free of charge on wherever you listen to podcasts. But for a fee, you can subscribe, and what you get for a subscription, you get actually a transcript of each podcast, and the transcript has in it some quiz questions at the end, some discussion questions, and it's set up for ESL learning in particular. So it's a great resource, and I could quickly show you how I would do that. That's just really sharing, again, something. It's really basically sharing internet material, but I'm going to quickly share this screen. Whoops. Okay, so this is what Culips looks like um, I'll just show you this. So in their category called simplified speech, which is for beginners or early intermediate folks, learners, you have the ability here, if you're a member, to download a transcript. And what I will do with my learner, if we're going to do a Tulips episode, is open up the transcript on my screen and share that screen. And then at the same time, I will share the audio from a podcast player, and I will pause the audio periodically, go back in the document, make sure that I'm highlighting where we are in the audio, make sure that my learner's understanding all the vocabulary, stop and discuss words that might be problematic, and so forth. I particularly like that, and my learner likes that. The content on this site, even if you're just listening to the audio without a transcript, is very good. It's very interesting. It's very topical. It's particularly good for young adults because the people who teach tend to be young adults on it. So it's a good resource that I like, and the sharing works well for that. And then I'll also show you briefly ESL Library that I also subscribe to. This is a nice resource. I know others have tried it and not found it particularly easy or helpful, but there is a lot of material in here, and you know, just to show you what it looks like when you're sharing your screen. So maybe there's here's just a simple worksheet. So you can see how you would use material from a resource like this. Again, just sharing your screen, allowing your learner to read or demonstrating to them whatever it is that the lesson is about. In this particular case, there are here's a thing with short answers. So you can use this to do what I think is a really nice lesson. And there's just tons and tons of content in ESL Library. And I think that I know that LitNet has lists of lots of other online resources that are out there, and this is just where you have to spend some time looking at all of the resources and pulling stuff that you're comfortable using as the teacher, and that you think your learner is going to be able to relate to, and get yourself organized, get a folder pulled together with those materials, know where those links are on the web, so that you can share them in a session with your learner. I think the last thing that I really wanted to try to demonstrate, if I could, is working in a Google Doc collaboratively. This is really, to me, it's the ultimate whiteboard, because you can both be typing in the same document at the same time. Does anybody here already use Google Docs and would like to be the guinea pig for this demonstration? Okay, so Trisha, I'm going to try to do this demonstration with you if I can.
Sure, I'll try.
Okay. So first thing I'm going to do, and for this I'm going to share my desktop so that you can try to see some of the steps here. And by the way, I know Leah's mentioned this previously. I did a video on it. In that outline that I sent you today, I included the link to that video, which gives this in somewhat more detail, but I thought it would be helpful for people to see this. Okay, so I'm going to open up my Google Docs, which is obviously on your internet browser. And I'm going to, I have uploaded into Google Docs a lot of that stuff that's in my folder, my tutoring folder on my computer, particularly stuff that's in word processed form, so that that I can share it with my learner and use it online collaboratively with my learner. And so here's, for example, I'm just going to show you this document. This just was an exercise. I don't even remember where I got this, but it was an exercise in practicing short answers and long answers. Are you busy? Yes, I am. Yes, I am busy, and so forth. I'm going to just show you. So in this document, in a Google Docs, you want to click share, and you want to look at what the sharing permissions are. So where it says get link at the bottom, anyone on the internet with this link can edit. That's what you want it to say. So there are various options for how you share this. You can be the only person who can edit this document. You can be the only person who sees this document. You can share the permission to look at this document with other people. You can share permission to other people to edit the document. And so in order to work collaboratively, you want to share permission to edit the document. So anybody on the internet with this link can edit. And then I'm going to click copy link. And then in my Zoom meeting, I'm going to stop the share for a second. I'm going to, this is where I would use chat, perhaps. I'm going to send this link to everyone, but Trisha, maybe just for now, you'll open it.
Okay. Do you want me to open it now?
Yes, go ahead and open it. So when you're trying to do this, you have to make sure that in share screen, you will, when you're the host, your share screen button will have a little up button next to it that displays options. One of the options that has to be checked is multiple participants can share simultaneously. Okay, so that's going to allow Trisha and I both to share that same document simultaneously. So Trisha, were you able to open that document?
Yep, I have it open.
Okay, good. So I have it open as well. So Trisha, we should both share that document. So if you can, in your share screen menu, if you can share that document.
Can you see it?
Yes, I can. And I'm also going to share the same document. Okay, so now what's happened is we both have that document, which lives up in the cloud somewhere in the internet. We both have it open on our screen. We both have it shared so that we're while on Zoom and looking at our learner in the window, in a window on the right side of the screen, we have the document open. And so if I wanted to, if I type in the document, I'm just going to not type anything that means anything, just to demonstrate. So you should all be able to see, actually, you should all be able to see on your screen that I just typed in this line. You could see that, I assume? Okay, so Trish, you should try typing in the document now as well. And I assume you all can see that the document is changing further with Trisha's edits, right? I actually think this is a very it's a very nice way to work with your learner, particularly if you're working on you know, a specific exercise like this. The other thing I do with this is the document that I share sometimes is just a blank document. And that's really just a substitution for a whiteboard. We can both type to our heart's content. Maybe I want to have her type out a sentence she just spoke to me. So I'll just, you know, and again, obviously, you can share these documents. They're automatic. The nice thing about Google Docs is that it automatically saves any work that you do. So it's always there. You can go back to earlier versions. If we've typed in this, you can always retrieve the earliest version where the questions are blank, or the answers are blank, I should say, so that you haven't destroyed a document or a template. So that's how that works. If you want to look at that video that I sent the link to in the outline, it'll go maybe a little bit more slowly. But does anybody have any questions about that or anything else that I've covered so far?
I have a question.
Okay.
Mark, so for a recap, when you're using the Google Docs and you want to share this feature so that the other person has access and is able to write into the document, you share the link to your document then on their end, and then have the capability of alternating, adding whatever to that particular you've just shared with that.
Correct. That's exactly it. So this document is a single thing that exists up in the cloud, right? So as long as somebody has the link to this, and I've set the permissions such that anybody can edit it, whoever's typing in it, that's what when you press on the link to this document, you'll see the sum total of everything, of every edit that everyone has made. That's the collaboration feature, right? So and the trick is to share the link with anybody you want to have that capability. And then the business about sharing the screen is just so that you both are back in Zoom and looking at each other, and the document is open on both of your screens so that you're looking at it at the same time. You could, they could just open up Google Docs once they have the link and type in that document. While you're typing in the document, you'll have the same result. You'll be able to see all of the edits, but you won't be seeing each other simultaneously in Zoom. So that simultaneous sharing, remember that you as the host have to permit multiple parties to share at the same time. That's the trick that gets you so that the screen looks like this, and everybody who's editing the document is looking at the same document and looking at each other at the same time. So that's really.
I find this particular
Go ahead.
I think Myra's having internet delays, it seems like. I see that Barbara has a question too.
Yeah, Barbara?
Yes, my question is, at the beginning of this, you said, who works in Google Docs? So do our learners have to already have set up Google Docs, right?
Yes. Yes. Setting it up, there's not much to it. If you use Gmail, and a lot of people, who open an email account go to Gmail because it's free and it's easy, and lots of people use it. Then you will, when you get a link when you get a link to a Google Doc, it'll automatically open up in your browser, in your Google, on your Google page. So it's not that complicated to set it up. I mean, I found a couple of people that I've worked with, particularly younger people, all know Google Docs. If they've been in school, they've likely used other Google features like Google Classroom, particularly if they were in school during the pandemic. So they have familiarity with it. And if you haven't used Google Docs before, and you use something like Word, Microsoft Word, which is pretty common, or even whatever the Mac word processor is, those documents are easily, first of all, Google Docs seems a lot like Word. It feels very familiar if you use Word. The features are very similar, the menus are very similar, and so forth. Also, you can just upload a Word document into Google Docs, and it's usable. It's immediately usable. It doesn't have to convert format or anything like that. So I find Google Docs to be very, very user friendly, and I think most students, if they have at least a basic computer literacy, most of them I think would be able to use it pretty readily.
Thanks.
Any other questions? I wanted to just cover, before I stop, I just wanted to cover like a few best practices or, sort of general tips that I've found as I've worked on Zoom. Some of these I've mentioned already. I mentioned,
Sorry,
sorry?
can you stop the share screen so we can see each
Yes,
other?
I can,
This
sorry.
would be great. Then
Yes.
we can give people up questions more easily. Thank you.
Fair enough, good.
Thank you so much.
Good. Okay. So I mentioned some of these before. Computers are best in my experience. Tablets are okay. Tablets with a separate pointing device or a separate keyboard would be better than just a regular tablet. Phones are challenging. You can make all of these work if you have to, but obviously the bigger the screen, the better the Zoom experience is going to be. Obviously, picking a quiet location if you can to have your Zoom meeting. And I use earbuds, headphones are great. It just can be helpful in isolating sound and keeping focus. Build up your personal ESL library. That's going to be critical to having a successful Zoom experience. Explore all of those options that are out there. If you Google ESL teacher resources, the problem is, most of you I'm sure know already, is not a lack of resources. It's an abundance of resources, and trying to narrow down what particular pathway you're going to go down with your student. And you can always change. If something doesn't work, abandon it and move on to something else.
And Miguel and I are here to guide you specifically too. If you want to, after you've now heard a little bit about this, talk about your specific learner and specific resources, we're glad to help do some of that thinking with you too.
Let's see, what else did I want to say? Plan your lesson ahead. Obviously, the best laid plans, get changed anyway, but it's good to have it open. Just in terms of computer use, I try, for me, keeping it as visually uncluttered as possible, including when you're done sharing a screen, close the share screen option so that you're just looking at each other again. But just don't have other stuff, extraneous stuff open on your computer. Because for one thing, there's the chance that you'll inadvertently share something that you're not trying to share. But it's also just easier to run a session when you have fewer things open. And I maximize the window that I'm either talking in, if I'm just in Zoom, or if I'm sharing maximize the window that you're sharing so that your learner can see it. You can size the material within the window. In most cases, you can make it larger or smaller. And sometimes if they're on a smaller device than you are, they need it to be expanded in order to see it. So you have to sort of be able to work those functions while you're talking. Yeah, I just, remember on that share screen menu, if you're trying to share audio, to click the share audio, because I've had an experience where I've been playing a podcast, and 5 minutes into it, I realized my learner hasn't heard anything because I forgot to share that. I forgot to click that share audio option. And also, if you're trying to work collaboratively in the Google Doc, you have to have that feature that allows people to share documents simultaneously checked. I think those were all the things that I wanted to say. I mean, I know some of you at least have done teaching on Zoom and might have other things you want to add, or if anybody has any questions of me, now would be a good time.
I just have I've been finding some videos on YouTube, which have been really helpful too. So just if
Yes.
anybody needs a resource, it's good for their listening skills to hear conversations. So
Yeah, on that's a good point. I mean, when you share a video from YouTube on your screen, obviously check the audio box so that they're hearing the audio as well. But a lot of times you have the option to add subtitles.
Yeah.
So to be able to see the words as they're being spoken is a great asset.
Other questions for Mark? Or I think that this little workshop went from some really good beginning techniques to some advanced techniques too. So I think it was really kind of, hopefully everybody learned some new things, like even if it's just how to get on Zoom and how to do a couple things. And luckily we've recorded this, so I can share this all back with you too to watch again if that would be helpful. Because I feel like it went from beginner to advanced in 1 hour, which is great, and hopefully met all your different needs. But again, Miguel and I are here. Mark's been really generous with his time and expertise as well. We're going to put this up on our YouTube channel so that other people can see it, and we'll just keep growing and learning. And as we know, it's 2 years since the pandemic came. We thought it was going to be a quick 6 weeks or something, and here we are in life as we know it. So these skills are not fly by night. They're here to stay in one way or another. So Mark, thank you so much for being so generous with your talent and time, and what a great tutor and mentor.
My pleasure.
Colleague. So we really appreciate it.
Thank
Any
you.
more questions before we sign off? Anything else? All right, Lenore, yes. You're muted.
I just wanted to say that I'm really thank you for all those suggestions, and I'm going to try the shared Google Doc approach, but because I didn't know about that, I did use the whiteboard and I did use the text feature. And one thing that I have found really helpful, because pronunciation is one of the target areas that I do with my students, seems like that's almost the most important thing a lot of the times. And she often wants to know how do let's just say the word mansion as an example. How do I say the shun thing, part? So I type it out, MAN, and then SHUN. So, and then she repeats, and we do that all through the lesson. She's reading a book or something. We're reading biographies, and she's reading, and words come up, and at the end we go over them and we work on the pronunciation. She tends to write them down in her notebook. But that text thing works super well for that, using
Yeah.
that little text pencil. And when I tried doing it, just like you said, I tried doing it with the paintbrush, and oh my God, I mean, that's impossible. But
So what do you, so you use the text box?
I use the text
box
and then you
type.
just type.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Right.
the only downside is she can't type back, like you were suggesting with the
Right.
Google
Well, that's-
Docs, she'd be able to
Right.
type back.
Well, just chat, just using the chat is also an easy way without going through the rigmarole of the
That's
Google
true.
Docs thing to
That-
just quickly be dialoguing with your learner while you're talking.
Right.
I love that. I mean, I would say I use that most of all, because there's always, we're having a fine conversation and then she's clearly not understanding me, or I'm clearly not understanding her, and put it in writing, because I need it, and that always gets us off
Well-
whatever we're stuck on. So
Well,
chat.
that's
is
a
really-
great idea. I mean, you could just use chat and not bother with the whiteboard, is what
Yeah,
you're saying. Yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah,
get it. That, yes,
Yeah,
that would be
and
excellent.
chat by its nature is interactive, so
Yep.
both parties are on the chat already. So
Yep, good point. Thank you.
the one thing I didn't mention, one other thing that I have done, which is kind of nice, is if you have an e-reader like Kindle, if you read books on Kindle, and others may have the same thing, but Kindle has an app that you can download to your computer so that you can read your books on your computer, and that's just one more thing that you can share with your learners. If you wanted to read a book together, obviously, you could both get a copy of the book too, but if you wanted to read in class, so to speak, you can share your Kindle reader on the screen and both read from that together.
And News for You online, if any of you use that, that's a great thing to do on Zoom too. So that's news articles. I can, if anybody needs it, I can send you, we have a password. So if you're curious, you can email me after this, ask for the News for You link and password. Every Wednesday, there are new articles that come up, current event articles that are written at an intermediate level. They can hear it read aloud. There's discussion to be had, there are activities. So a lot of tutors, it's not for the very beginner, but for, I would say, a high beginner and up, it's a good resource. So great. Thank you, Mark. And thanks, everybody. I'm so glad to see you all. And thanks for what you're doing for LitNet and for our community. It's just wonderful. So see you next time. Thank
Bye,
you.
folks. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark.